Welcome everyone to MotoAmerica's 21 in 21, a series of which we look at the Superbike class, a class that was created back in 1976. And since that time, we've had 21 different Superbike champions. And now we're happy to welcome in number 14, Ben Bostrom from 1998. What is up, BB? How you living, buddy?
I'm living pretty good. Professional dad right now. Raced the bagger
right?
for fueling, and I'll tell you that re-sparked my love for motorcycles. So that was cool. You know, last year shooting NBC and watching races, I was like, wow, I really kind of miss it, but I hadn't been on a bike. And then I rode that, 634-pound bagger around. I was like, this thing's dope. I'm like, I'm pretty hooked. I know that sounds bizarre because it's a little different than your $1 million RC45, but I think it was awesome.
Well, let's go back in time. 1998, man, Superbike. What led to you getting into this championship? Tell us a little bit about your background getting into the 1998 championship.
You know, you're just a little kid. You have two brothers. You're racing in the field. Sometimes we'd go to the desert. And I think the hardest races in my life were just racing against like Torsten and Eric in the middle of nowhere for free, for pride. But somewhere it must have created a racer, because I would say, if you skip the rock 6 times, I'm going to skip that rock 7. It kind of gets is in there. And we got a kind of a lucky break. We had Aztec Racing give us a ride. Dad pushed real hard. But, those days when you're young, working on a bike till 3 a.m, getting up at 6 a.m., missing practice, calling in so you can make the heat races at Lodi and Newman and all the places. Man, they molded a hard character. And then we just all sleep in this little truck together that we could race the next day because we didn't want to pay for a hotel room or drive home 3 hours. So it was those kind of days I kind of made you. So what is the weirdest thing happen when you get that little ride, from Monty Miller, who is Joe Leonard's guy. He owned 2 Harley shops, Fresno and Ventura. And then being back east and hanging out with Roger Riemann, he was another hard character. That guy taught me more than both my parents combined. Between him and Monty Miller, you didn't know things, shave in the sink. You didn't know to clean the hair out of the sink, right?
Yeah.
You didn't know to keep your foot off the stool when you put your shoes on. Like just stupid things. I'm like, man, how did I not? It's embarrassing to learn etiquette at 17 years old. I'll tell you that, but I'm really thankful for those guys. And I always wanted to thank Roger. And then I went to Daytona the year he passed away on the BMWs. And so I never got to tell him that he was kind of like this godsend. But those days made you hard. And then Bartels gave Eric and I rides on Harleys. Back then, the Harley was cool. We just worked basically 20 hours a day. And we had these Harleys, and you're working on like customer bikes so you can pay for your own racing. Bartels is real cool. He give you that $1,000 a month so you can pay for all your gas and things. And Dunlop took care of our tires. And then we had to switch to Metzler. And that was the worst situation ever, but it made you a better rider. At first, I was like, man, we're riding Metzlers. And later you're thankful because you're like, man, I rode the shit out of that Harley to become something. And I remember buying a bike off of Mike Hale, who had one of Tom Kipp's old championship bikes, Camel bike, yellow. Okay. It had, before Smoking Joe, it was Camel. They had a blue logo on it. He said I had to peel that off. So I just had a yellow bike, and we raced this bike at Chandler Raceway. And I should have got 4th in the 750 class, and Fred Merkel got hurt and retired. You remember this?
Yeah, I do.
So I got 3rd, but because that Harley had made you a pretty good racer, it gave me just enough, like that, and maybe sliding around the bike with big handlebars at Laguna on the rain on my Harley that the factories gave. Okay, we'll give you a ride for 98, but you got to wait because we have Crevier and McGill signed up. And so I was paid to like sit on the bench for a year. So I raced for Zero Gravity and with Glenn Cook and had so much fun just learning, playing. And we had a real 70s lifestyle back then. So I really gave less shits about racing. Like we enjoyed going out and following like the band of Polyester around Hollywood and places, and got crazy outfits and wild times. I'll tell you that. And then when 98 came, all business, I was like, oh, now I'm a factory guy, right? Like business. And I don't know if, when you're not quite ready for it, I'll say that.
Yeah. Well, what were the bikes like back then? I mean, obviously with you doing MotoGP coverage, you understand now about how far we've come with chassis development, tire development, electronics specifically. Was 98 Was there even a whisper of electronics back in 1998 when you were on the American Honda?
There was no traction control. It was insane. Plus, the RC45 was a very fast bike. I mean, if you remember the GP bike and the RC45, the teams would fight for more horsepower. And I think the RC45 had more. It would just keep pulling. It would never stop. That thing was insane. They gave me a bike in 97. Ray Plum had put in these crazy hours of working on 600 so we can get to, what do we have? Homestead, where they first launched Homestead, right? Where it tested.
Yeah.
So Ray would work all day and then stay out till like 1 a.m. working with me on my bike, building them up. And he goes, Ben, I'm gonna you seem pretty good. I'm gonna take one of the bikes that's a couple years old out of the showroom and let you ride it at Laguna, which is pretty crazy. Can you imagine this? And that to me is the most legendary story. And that guy made my career. Not only did he put me with zero gravity, built the bikes for me. This is all on his own time and dime. And then pull the bike out of like old stock, which is weird they had one, and gave me the bike for Laguna. And we put that thing on front row, first try. And we were racing for first place. And they, Mladen, it was McGill, Mladen and I racing for first. And he ran to my shifter and broke the shifter off and it got stuck in third gear and we finished like fifth. It was ridiculous. And I thought, man, Ray like made it. But the more funny part of the story is Ray goes, yeah, you're having fun, but it was hell for us because the president of Honda was there and it was before Ray blank. And so this Japanese guy, he hears RC45 because they're unique sounding.
Oh yeah.
And he hears a second one. Then what does he hear? A third one. Because here comes Crevier too, right? And Ray goes, he comes over to me, Ray-san, did I hear 3 RC45? Yes. Well, we have a rider signed up for next year. We thought we'd give him kind of a guest ride, let him know what he's getting into. And he's on the front and we were on the front, but he's like, oh no. He goes, man, this guy's jumping up and down, pissed off. And he's like, I don't know how we didn't get fired for that thing, but those were great days.
Time. It was a different time. So what about 1998? Any
fast though, dude.
The bikes were wicked fast. Yeah.
That story was like I got on the thing and I thought, you can't build a better bike than this. I'm coming off of riding a 600, a Harley, and I thought this thing's insane. I mean, it's insane. And McGill, I go talk to him. He's like, yeah, Ben, this piece of shit's got all kinds of problems. He's like, this and that. I'm like, you can't build a better bike. This is like sent from the gods, And then in 98, I got that bike and I had Merlin. So I had this incredible engineer. I had what I thought for sure is the best bike ever made on the planet. Mm-hmm. And you can't do any wrong. But thinking back on it, like the thing was squat in the back. We'd be at Road Atlanta, going down the straightaway, just lose the front for no reason, wide open, like tapped out in 6th gear in the front would just fold, all kinds of no TC, but it was so goddamn fast and it was in a straight line. And then I watched as the progression came and Suzuki and people got things figured out with traction control and stuff like that, the bikes got dumbed down, easier to ride, wheelie control, launch control, right? And I was at that era. Like I was Ducati's rider when we had paddle shifts. Like I didn't have to think. I just hold a finger on the button and it was shifting for me. It knows this is a 4th gear straightaway. You know what I mean? I touch the brakes, it goes, this is a 2nd gear, and it just starts back shifting. And so you're like, man, it's kind of taking the fight out of it. And back then I'd read Valentino was offered a Ferrari drive or something. And he drove the car. It said that it's too boring. The rider or driver doesn't do enough. The motorcycle, you're still half the equation, right? The car, you're just sitting there like this, totally reliant on the engineers. So I could see it. And then last year with the NBC, it brought me back to the one time I actually rode one of those things at Laguna. And I remember thinking, God, it's so dumbed down. It was crazy. And I really thought it was, but in the team's defense, they had completely messed up. And the thing was stuck on a full rain map all weekend. Because I kept telling them, the bike's just too damn slow. And it doesn't stop. And they're like, it's impossible. And I was like, trust me, it doesn't stop. But good thing it's so slow because it makes the corner entry okay. And they're like, this is LCR. And they're like, Ben, you ride a superbike. I said, trust me, it's a hell of a lot faster in this thing. And they thought that was the craziest shit ever, right? And so they come up to me they're like, just beat Elias. That's all I really care about. And I was like, I don't know. Elias is probably riding the same shit box I am. You know what I mean? I was like, I felt bad for him. And he seemed like a cool cat. And they're like, well, he's complaining a lot. I'm like, I would too. And so we show up on Sunday morning. They're like, Ben, we apologize. It's been on a full rain map all weekend. It's going to be a hell of a lot faster when you start this race. And I was like, oh my God, because now you don't even know what to expect, you know? And I was like, shit, when we took off, maybe the first lap coming into the corners, like 20-mile-an-hour closing speed quicker. And now there's really no brakes. I'm pulling the brakes as hard as I can and thinking, I'm going to die on this bike. Like it was frightening. And I didn't know where, you know, you're at Cap Rex and a few people. And I was like, I'm just afraid to run into them. Like the bike was so quick. Fortunately, they're kind of dumbed down. And so the riders back in the day, the best way to put it, if you had taken Valentino would have been part of the era too, but if you had taken like probably like the McDowan and those kind of characters that could ride like a ride in a bull. And then the new bikes, it seemed the riders are really good on the 250s that were just glass, you know, like a Biaggi style, right? Just smooth. Mm-hmm. Man, they're so pretty to watch on those things now because when they get all kinds of confidence, you see it. The bikes are backed in, but the ability to be smooth is incredible because the bike's doing what it's supposed to be doing. If you turn the electronics off, it gives you some horrendous crashes. You'd see riders riding around half throttle, like, yeah,
exactly.
Right now, like their confidence is way more than it should be because the bikes are so smart.
Well, we see it too, don't we? With some like really violent high sides, the occasional now high side when something fails, right? Either the computer can't keep up with some loss of traction or a sensor fails. And, you know, and you why wouldn't you have full 100% confidence in those electronics if it works every time except that one time? But that's the one thing. I mean, now I've ridden bikes like Gagne's Superbike, full electronics, and I do 10 laps and I come in and they're like, okay, you're 3% of the lap, 100% throttle. Jake's 27.4%. And I'm like, well, yeah, I don't ride a bike with as sophisticated as, like, it's going to take me a long time to trust these things. You know, still look at my data trace and you can see where I'm actually opening the throttle, where Gagne just
goes rolling it like this.
Yeah, I'm rolling it and he just goes pop, and you're just like, that's trust, 100% trust. So
you were watching, who was the guy at Laguna? It was the Casey Stoner. I'll never forget watching him come through 9. He come chicane, click third, boom, into 9 and just go full throttle. Do you remember that?
Yeah, of course.
I watch him just go bang. And there's photos of the kid with his elbow, like and I'm like, the trust is insane because he knows the bike, the sensor is registering every degree of angle, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it's doing some sort of algorithm off the front, the rear tire, the angle. I'm like, dude, one little problem, but he was just full trust all the time. Thought, man, it's like you putting your balls on the line, but also the trust in the horse is insane. Like it was amazing.
Yeah, it's pretty great. So let's talk about after 1998. So you win the AMA Superbike Championship in 1998 for American Honda. Then what happens to you?
That was interesting because we go through 98 and, you know, the first part of 98 was a little tricky. We started building some speed. I break my ankle really bad, doing just free riding crap. Back in the day, we used to free ride. Okay. Huck jumps. And I was shooting an Alpine Star commercial on this big quarter pipe before the quarter pipes in the X Games. And I got the thing a little bit wrong and broke my ankle. And I thought, oh, that's not good. So we raced the next 3 events with crutches onto the starting line. Cause I'm like, I just need points. Cause back then the system paid for finishes. You know, it had a really, really bad point system.
Yeah.
But we're winning at Loudon and I crash out of the lead because I think I got to open up this gap on Mladen, right? And so I crash out of the lead, pick the bike up, finished with a couple points. I don't know what place we got, probably 12th, 15th or something. And I'll never forget this because they come over and Honda goes, all you have to do is finish. Don't race for the wins anymore. And that was it. They're like, we don't want to see you trying to win. Second's okay. Third, just keep finishing there. And I was like, oh, talk about popping a rider's balloon because they go, don't go for the win because if you crash again, we're out of the title. Right now, we could win. And I thought, oh my God. So that was the end of like, that was the kind of the end of like the fun. I was like, then I'm just riding around that year going, man, I just want this year to end. I'm over this year. And we got lucky and won the title. And Ray was all happy. Who's the guy? No, Gary Mathers. Remember Mathers?
No, of course. Oh, yeah.
Yeah, kind of a nice guy, kind of an asshole, all mixed on into one. And he was like, Ben, good job. This is probably the first time a rookie's ever won the Superbike title. And this has been the only year with Honda that I would not have won a title. And he's the guy, he didn't even want me on the bike. He was, at that point, I already knew he was trying to get rid of me to put my brother on the bike, anybody else, because Eric, he can get super cheap. And Nicky Hayden was coming up too. He needed a ride. And I was like, God, this guy's, you know, but I'm like, but I love Honda and I love Ray Plum. And I'm like, I just want to ride that bike again. And what happened was my manager at the time just trusted that Honda wasn't going to get rid of the number 1 plate. And so he goes, here's the number Ben wants, which is actually way more than I need to be paid, but at the same time, way less than like McGill was being paid. Right.
Yeah.
And he's like, and Ben's the future. So, and they just called his bluff. Like Gary Mathers already had it in for him. And I remember getting this phone call and he goes, I'm like, what's up, Alan? He goes, I don't know. I lost you your ride. And I was like, what? How's that possible? And he goes, well, I was supposed to sign something by like Friday at noon. They called my bluff and they just fired you. And I was like, Alan, you know, it's pretty late in the game. I don't think there's a factory ride left. So I guess we're not racing next year. I mean, that's what it looked like.
Wow.
Actually, Ducati stepped up and gave me a bike because there wasn't all the seats were taken.
Yeah.
You know, it was gnarly. And they gave the ride to my brother and Nick, right? They had, that was good. That was their next order of riders. And Eric got hurt straight away from a high side. And then, so they got rid of him the following year too. And they put Nick on, you know, and that bike's tricky. It took Nick was an awesome rider, but still took what, 4 years to maybe win a title?
I think 3, because he got on there in 2000, didn't he? Because 99, he would have been on Arian. So 2000, 2001, he wins it in 2002. Yeah.
It wasn't an easy bike to ride. And I still don't think it is. When I watch Marquez and then I'm like, it's not easy. You know, the Honda's tricky, but I always thought I was gonna be a Honda rider. So I got kicked off and onto a Ducati. And part of you gets kind of sour, but the other part of me thought, well, we just got to go win everything, right? Like this should be a pretty easy title to win. But with the Ducati, then you realize the problems, like the bike broke down a couple times, right?
Ohio, I remember 99, Mid-Ohio, when you were leading, you were gone. And the thing,
but I remember not leaving the starting line at after we're set pull at Sears Point. And it just died on the start. So there was, you know, Leanne was actually running with the starter motor to the thing, which is not going to start the bike, right? I mean, the electronic failure, the thing just died on the start. But like you start thinking, you're like, man, but at the same time, I would never give it back because being with the Italians and Ducati was some of the best years of my life. The only thing I was bummed about, I'll say this, I wanted to stay. When I lost to Mladen, we got a bad tire for the last race. Should have won. Terry Vance did everything he could. Gobert didn't show up because he's like, Ben, if I'm not going to win the title, there's no way in hell my teammates winning the title. So he just stays in Australia. So they put Smith on the bike to try to get points, which was really cool. I got a bad tire for the race. It was like a bowling ball. And man, I thought, I can't believe I'm going to lose this title to Matt. And I lost it by 4 points. Kind of the same thing like my brother, right? We both, and I thought, okay, next year, I'm just going to win every race. Now I know the bike. I understand it. And I made the deal with Terry. I was set. And I was like, okay, I'm actually going to go like racing. And Ducati called to fire Troy Corser. Do you remember this? And they, you know, Troy Corser is a wild man.
Yeah.
I'll say this, and I don't mind saying it on camera because who gives a shit anymore? But like, you know, he's drinking, playing, doing his thing, but he's also a world champion. I mean, this guy is badass with Fogarty. They go, we're getting rid of Troy and we're putting Ben on the bike. And I told him, oh, I'm not going. I have a contract in America. Like, I just want to beat Matt. And also like, I need more experience. I'm not ready. You know? And they said, oh no, we actually hold your contract. You're going.
Ooh. And
that's what happened. That's why I got shipped off. I didn't want to leave. They shipped me off and they made me ride Troy's bike as well. With like 24.5 head angle. And the thing was all stretched out because Troy's got this beautiful style, curb to curb. That's why you can't let him go. Qualifying, he's going to bite you. If you let him get a little 10 bike length lead, it turns into 20, 30, and he's gone, right? You have to like keep passing him when he sets up the corner. So I couldn't ride that damn thing, hence getting fired. But those were like some of the best years of my life. And it turns out I was just as bad as Troy Corser. Like I was over there with my bus with the disco ball, the karaoke machines. Every Sunday night we're drinking.
The soap on a rope.
Oh my God, the whole thing, right? These giant blow up things. And like Tardazzi would show up in the morning and be so pissed because there'd just be alcoholic beverages everywhere. Like, you know, and he's like thinking, oh my God, I fired Corser and I'm right back into the same damn situation. And I was thinking, well, I mean, you know, dude, this is how we raced back then. That was like the era, like that. And you still went fast on the track. You did your job. You just stayed out all night. We were hard back then. It's kind of crazy to think.
Yeah, but then that one year you go, what, 5 race wins in a row, right? Like
that's when the tires are pretty equal. That was the coolest time actually, because either tire manufacturer could win, and we had a lot of different guys. You know, there's 15 guys that might win,